Right, today we're going to replace the fan on this T500RS. We're going to take the tiny little fan out and put a big one in, but the difference is we're not going to open the casing. There's quite a few videos online showing you how to take the case apart, and it looks pretty involved, and I'm guessing there's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong. Looking at how people have opened it up and where the fan is, I sort of estimated the size from the various diagrams, and I've drawn about a 6 centimeter line around there. Is it 6 or 8? I can't remember what, just roughly that size, and that's the size we're going to use to get the fan out. Afterwards we're going to cut the hole a bit bigger and put the big fan on. The first thing we need to do, well, I don't know if this is strictly necessary, but I sort of went outside the borders and drilled some holes. I probably should have drilled some bigger holes because we're going to then cut between these holes. Right, once we've got those 4 holes, we'll take the Dremel with a cutting blade, and at a pretty high speed, not too high speed because it ends up melting the plastic too much, we're going to go along and make a nice straight line, although it doesn't matter because later we're going to cut a round hole anyway, but just to get the fan out. I really wanted to feel my way down here and make sure that once I got through the thin plastic I wasn't cutting into the fan at all, and this cut worked pretty well. In a later cut I slightly cut into the fan, but that didn't make too much difference because I could just move a little bit and I was down below. So once you've got that all cut, and with a little bit more prying and cutting again, I managed to get that piece out, and exactly as I expected, the fan popped out very neatly. So that was awesome. I also managed to not cut any cables, although it doesn't really matter because we're going to be cutting the cable through in a minute anyway. Right, taking a look at the Arctic F9 pinouts, I had to Google a little bit and find out that obviously black is ground, and the one right next to it, yellow, is the 12 volts. As you can see, I've put it on my motorcycle battery and it's spinning nicely. So we know that we're good to go with 12 volts. Make sure you do have a 12 volt fan. Any PC fan should work for this trick. So now I've wired up obviously black to black, and then the yellow is the power, so that goes onto the red, and we're now going to solder that together. So here's a quick lesson in how not to solder, but yeah, it gets the job done. Just about twisting those little wires and then soldering them together, each according to its kind. And then we're going to put these little sleeves over it which melt and shrink, little shrink wraps. And here we have some riveting high-speed footage of me melting the shrink wrap just to make sure those things stay in place. You can use normal insulation tape as well. Afterwards we tuck those wires very nicely inside the case and we're good to go. Right, I ended up cutting the hole in the thing rounder so that the blades don't hit, and in order to position the fan I use this little trick of heating up the tip of a screwdriver and pushing it through, and once it's hot enough it makes a nice little hole, and that exact hole fitted the original screws from the original fan. So I got that thing set down, and you don't want to screw it down too tight, but it just needs to be stable. And then I had to chop that little piece at the top to replace the gap, and I plugged it in, and I was very worried because at the start the fan didn't run, but that's kind of normal with these wheels. They're in a mode where they only switch on when it gets hot, but eventually after one round of the Nürburgring it started up. So we've got this fan sucking air out of the wheel, and that's pretty awesome. It does unfortunately block my view a little bit, so the way I'm sitting at the moment I can sometimes not see the very bottom of the screen if there's any information there, like I don't know how many seconds are left in the race or something like that. I battle to see it, but that's just a setup issue. The fan's nice and quiet. That's the main thing, and I hope it's doing its job. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video.